So just to be clear, the questions I was given were written by the library trustees, not by me. And so I will introduce the candidates. And on my left, I have, let's see, Reagan LaRochelle, who is the Democrat running for the Maine Senate District 15, which includes Augusta, Belgrade, China, Mount Vernon, Sydney, and Vassalboro. Unfortunately, her Republican opponent, Richard Bradstreet, there was a confusion about communication, and so he's not able to be here. Then we have Katrina Smith, who is the incumbent in the House of Representatives for District 62, which includes China, Hibbert's Gore Township, which I don't know if I've ever heard of, I'm embarrassed to say, Palermo, Somerville, and Windsor. And she is the incumbent and a Republican, and Pam Swift is running for that seat as well, and she's the Democratic candidate. And then we have Tim Basham, who is running for the Budget Committee. And there are 3 other open positions and nobody running for them. So your chances are pretty good. So if anybody wants to be a write-in candidate, spread the word. And then we have 5 people running for the select board for 3 positions. Todd Dietrich is to the right of Tim. Brent Chesley, an incumbent. Ed Bailey, Tom Rumpf, and Blaine Casey, who is also an incumbent. So there are 2 incumbents running and 3 new candidates. So I'm going to try to change the order in which I give you an opportunity to answer, and obviously we will refrain from talking when someone else is talking. So it's a little bit, I don't think we've ever had a forum where we've had state candidates and local candidates in the same room. So the questions are really more focused on China, but many of the issues apply to most of the other small municipalities, so you'll be able to generalize your answers. Okay, so why don't we start with Reagan, and just tell us about yourself, your background, your reason for running, and your relevant experience, please.
Sure. Do we have a time frame?
Yeah, just a couple minutes.
Okay.
And the mic is over here, so
okay.
yeah.
Sure, great. So thank you for coming, everyone. My name is Reagan LaRochelle. I am the current House District 59 representative, which is part of Augusta, and I am running for the state senate this November, which includes Belgrade, China, Mount Vernon, Sydney, Vassalboro, and Augusta. I grew up in Augusta. I went to Coney High School. From there, I went to college and then moved out of state for a while. At that point, I decided to get my Master's of Business Administration and focus on economic development, which is what I currently do now. I'm an economic development consultant practicing in Maine. I moved back to Augusta and have 17-year-old twin boys who attend Coney. Yeah, they're a lot of fun. So I also own a small commercial cleaning business, and a few years ago I was asked to run for the Augusta City Council, and I did that. I ran for the at-large spot and won that seat. And the reason why I ran was because I felt like I had something to contribute growing up in the community, being an economic development consultant, and wanting to contribute that way. In the middle of that time frame, our House district representative in Augusta moved out of state, and so I was asked to run in a special election for that seat, which is nothing that I ever considered. It wasn't anything I was necessarily interested in. I was just trying to do my public service for my community. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I did feel like I had something to offer at the state level, and providing my background and expertise that way. So I did run for the House seat and won that in 2021. So I've been a member of the Maine legislature since then. I'm looking forward to the opportunity of serving you in this district as well, and I hope that you will reach out to me if I do get elected, and I'm happy to come and speak to you anytime. So I will stop there with my
great. Thank you.
intro. Thank you.
All right, Katrina.
Hi everybody, I'm Katrina Smith. I grew up in Appleton on a family farm right there in the middle of town with a single mom, and went to Gordon College, got a BA in sociology, moved back to Maine, kind of did what a lot of people do in Maine, went from different careers and different industries. I was in the banking industry and the schools. Been a real estate agent for I was a real estate agent in 2008, then the crash happened, but I've been one now for about 8 years, and my husband and I are property investors. I have 5 kids, 3 of my own and 2 stepkids. My own kids are 19 and 20 and 24. And then I have 3, but now I have to say 4 grandchildren because my stepchildren, my oldest stepson just adopted a baby out in Montana this morning. So yeah, he's very newborn, so they got there as fast as they could. So it's pretty exciting. I've been in the legislature for the past 2 years. I sit on the Innovation Development, Economic and Advancement Committee with Reagan. And a lot of interesting things that were learned over these past 2 years. I think it's really good to have that experience and then move on and be ready to go on the first day, whereas when you're first serving, you're just trying to figure out where the bathroom is, and where to go and how to do things. But now I've had the experience, and I know what I'm going to do the first day that we step in the State House, and I've really appreciated working for China.
Thank you. Pam?
Hi, my name's Pam Swift, and I'm running for state representative. Just to give you a little bit of background, I got my BS in animal science because I planned to be a veterinarian, but sometimes life takes you in funny directions, and I wound up going to medical school instead. I did a residency in OBGYN, and then joined one of the largest private practices in town. After 23 years, I came full circle and moved to Palermo. My husband and I bought a farm where we raised sheep. So now I'm midwifing lambs instead. While in Palermo, I've been very civically active. I'm serving my 2nd term on the select board. I'm trustee and secretary of our Palermo Community Library. I'm secretary of the Branch Mills Grange, chair of the Palermo Days Committee, and member of the Historical Society. I also write a quarterly newsletter that gets mailed to every resident in Palermo to convey important information to our residents. So, yes, I've been dedicating my time to make Palermo a better place to live, and I would do the same for my district if elected.
Thank you.
My name's Tim Basham. I've been a self-employed logger and arborist since about '88, and I got on the budget committee the first time as a write-in candidate with 3 votes, a landslide, and hopefully I'll get more than 3 votes this go around. But I'm participating in the budget committee basically as community service, and I just wish more people would participate because of all the empty seats that are on the budget committee. The budget committee doesn't seem to have much authority over the selectmen in town. This seems to be more of an advisory role. That's what I've noticed, but we'll see what the future holds for all of us.
Thank you.
Put your names down as write-in candidates for the other 3 people.
Todd?
I'm Todd Dietrich. I grew up in a little town called Lordstown in Ohio. Moved to Maine 17 years ago when my wife started a residency. We fell in love with the area, and 13 years ago when my first son was born, we moved to China, and been here since. I have a second son who's 9, and I've been working for the University of Maine system for 15 years as a computer geek. Various different titles throughout the years. Right now I'm a system administrator. And I'm running for a select board Because lots of different reasons, but I feel that we can do a better job of listening to the various committees and boards, and do more to help the residents.
My name is Brent Chesley. I grew up in Lincoln, Maine. My family all worked in the mills. I kind of broke the mold, I guess. I went to University of Maine, studied engineering, and then after that I went to work for Wyman & Simpson Incorporated, which is a heavy highway construction company. I've done just about every job there, a job title there, I guess, except for mechanic, which is probably a good reason. And I was fortunate enough to be working for a gentleman that was gracious, and he allowed myself and another employee to purchase the company about 12 years ago. And we've had pretty good success, and I've lived in China for 20 years, and I guess I'm married, I have 2 grandchildren, 2 stepchildren. I guess the reason I got involved with the town, some of you are probably aware, but I had a pretty heated disagreement with a code enforcement officer who was pretty deceitful, and the disagreement turned into a prime example of harassment. Fortunately, I was able to afford to defend myself, and while going through all that, I said to myself, not everybody has that ability, and it's just not fair, and I'm sure that there's been more cases than not where people just couldn't defend themselves. So I got involved to try to make sure that everybody gets treated fairly. I have been on the select board for 2 years. I've learned a lot, made a lot of good friends, and I'd like to continue to help the citizens of China, and that's why I'm running.
Thank you. I just want to add that it's not the current
It
code
is not the
enforcement
current
officer. Just to clarify that.
Yes, that is correct. The one we have now, the guy is wonderful.
Yeah.
People should be very, very happy with him.
Okay, Ed.
So my name is Ed Bailey. I've lived in China my whole life. Matter of fact, I live a quarter of a mile from where I was not born and raised, but was raised. I've done just about everything. I went to Erskine Academy. Out of Erskine Academy, I went to Thomas College. Realized that the college life wasn't for me. Went right into the workforce. I've done everything from truck driving, which I've done an awful lot, to I was a self-employed home builder for 9 years. I did that for a while. My wife and I together owned and operated the Redemption Center down on Route 3 as Tam's Redemption Center. We operated that for 16 years. Made an awful lot of good friends by running our own business. And you learn a lot, and we learned how to treat people. And we always treated people fair. People were always fair to us. And, years ago, I sat on the planning board for 5 years. I sat on the planning board for 5 years, and currently I guess I'm on a building committee with Sheldon for a new building addition that is proposed down to the town. I've always wanted to try to help as much as I can. Haven't always been able to be as involved as I would like to be. Kind of like to get on the select board. I did run for select board one other time, was unsuccessful many years ago. I think people in this town, a lot of people in this town are struggling. And there's got to be a way to make things better for people in this town. Whether it be, we'd all like to say, let's go out and cut taxes. That's what everybody wants to do. But wait, how are you going to do that? How are you going to get to that point? don't have the answers because I've never been on the select board. You know, I don't know all the answers to that. But there's gotta be some way that we can keep it so that, you know, people don't have to worry about, you know, not being able to afford their taxes and not being able to stay in their home. So that's really why I want to get on the select board, is I want to get educated, and I want to try to find a way to help people. If I can help one person, my father, stay in his house, you know, he's 83 years old, 84 years old, and his tax bill is killing him. Maybe it won't, but I'd like to try. So that's me.
Thank you.
Good. I'm Tom Rumpf. I grew up in Poland Spring, Maine. I moved here in '88, so I've been here for quite a while. I've been on many boards actually, to start my career, I was a welder by trade, went to welding school, was a welder for many, many years. Foremans of 2 or 3 shops, actually ran one of the shops for 8. I am the chair of the budget committee. Like Tim said, there's 3 spots open, and if I get voted to the select board, which I'm running for, and there'll be 4 spots open because I'll get taken off of the budget committee. I'm also have been since 2017 the current president of China Four Seasons Club. We do quite a bit in town. We brought the Derby back. It's one of the biggest derbies in central Maine right now. We give a lot back to the town in that manner. I've done a lot of work with landowners and volunteering, so volunteering is nothing new to me. The real reason that I decided to run for select board this year instead of just keeping my current position as budget chair is I don't feel that the budget committee ordinance is correct. In the current ordinance that you will be voting for, I am not a proponent of it because I feel the budget committee ordinance is backwards. The budget committee ordinance, basically, the budget goes to the selectmen, then it goes to the advisory board to look it over. It should, in my opinion, go to the advisory board, be looked over, and as an advisory board, we give it to the selectmen and have a little bit more say. However, the way it currently works, it goes to the selectmen, then us, and basically they've made up their minds. So there's really no changing anything, or we have to fight really hard for it. Which just brought me to the point of that I think I want to run for selectman and move up a little bit more and help out the community as much as I can.
Yeah, sure. I'm Blaine Casey. I'm the current select board member. I moved into town from Thayer Hospital to Weeks Mills in 1959. And I was raised here all my life, except for a few years where I moved away to Windsor after I married my wife, Carrie. She and I built a construction business. We've done a lot of residential buildings throughout the town of China and surrounding towns, Windsor, Palermo, and then got into the commercial aspect of it. And Tom's right, he's bid to us many times with some structural steel. Have a pretty successful business for just a couple small town kids that grew up and married 42 years. We have 3 kids, 4 grandchildren, 4 boys, grandchildren. So we understand the struggles of families, and I guess I got into the planning board because I wanted to help families as well. I had elderly parents growing that were getting older every year in the town of China, and I saw their financial struggles. And they both lived to a successful old age, relatively healthy for the most part. And so that's why I'm running for the select board again. I've been on it for 4 years, 2 terms, and it's been an eye-opener. It's not business. It's definitely a municipality government type of structure. And so it's been an eye-opener, and I've learned a lot, and I think I have a lot more to offer.
Great, thank you, everybody. All right, the first couple of questions have to do with housing. Affordable housing is a specific concern for China residents. especially the elderly. In an effort to address this problem, LD 2003 was enacted in 2022 to increase housing opportunities in Maine by adjusting zoning and land use ordinances. What are your thoughts on how to approach this housing problem for lasting change in China or in your district? I'm going to start with Blaine this time.
We've been involved in a lot of housing projects throughout the state of Maine. We did a project a few years ago now in Princeton, Maine, for elderly housing. And after 2 years, they never rented a spot because the elderly folks didn't want to leave their homes. They wanted to stay in their home, they wanted to die in their homes. So I'm not really sure that
If you could talk a little louder.
louder? I feel like I'm yelling. It was kind of an eye-opener for us. And then having my parents, who were both passed, 87 and 95, that were very adamant about staying in their home. We took them to housing facilities that were probably considered affordable, but it wasn't what they wanted. And I've heard that from a lot of people. I know I've got a lot of friends, my parents have a lot of friends. Most of them have passed in their homes. So I don't really know what the solution is. It's expensive to build. To make housing affordable is a challenge. And for town municipalities, I don't think we could ever raise any kind of money to do that without the assistance of our state delegates and federal delegates.
I thought about this one a lot, and of course my first one was what as a selectman can we do about this? Really, I mean, I watched my mother-in-law and my aunt. We took care of both of them in my house, and they were happy there. My mother-in-law passed right there in her room. My aunt, we ended up having to bring her to she's actually in a facility in Waterville right now, and I see the care that she gets, and the care she was getting at home is obviously better. The lack of people, the lack of employees out there is just amazing to me, and the lack of care that they're getting is really hard. As a selectman, I'm not sure what I can do about that. We can try to keep them in their homes, but we need some more programs. Possibly, I don't know. I mean, Sheldon has a really good program on Wednesdays for the elderly in this town. I really believe in that program, but I'm not sure. I don't have a good answer. I don't know as a selectman what we can do about that, because obviously we don't have the funding to do something like that.
Well, again, I'm going to kind of reiterate some things that they've already said. That they were just going to hash this over and over and over. It's like, I don't know where we go to make this work. My first thought is, let's do everything we can to keep people in their own homes. You know, that's where I want to see. I want to see people be able to stay in their homes. You know, I don't think we're going to go down here on Palmer Terrace and go to the end of the road and throw up a 30-unit apartment place so people can go live there. Number one, you can't afford to build it. Number two, once you get it built, people can't afford to go live there. And I just don't see that. I feel like it's I don't know. I kind of feel like it's a big city question for a small town. You know, that's how I feel about it. And my whole thought is why I want to come get into be a selectman is I want to find every way I can to help people to cut down on what they have to spend so they can stay at home.
Ed kind of nailed it. It's really a big city question for a little town. I mean, to think that the town, China, would have the resources to build an elderly housing that's just not even feasibly possible. And to think that, it would be great if some private developer came in and built something, but, one of the biggest challenges for this town, to have private investment of any any size, is the fact that we don't have public water and sewer. And I'm not advocating that we do public water and sewer, because that's just a whole nother ridiculous thought process, but it is reality. I mean, people are gonna spend their money in Winslow or Augusta, Waterville, places where, they have that public water and sewer. The only thing that we can really do is just, in my opinion, just try to keep people's taxes low. And, the property tax stabilization program that the state did a few years ago was a great idea if it had been done properly and for the right reasons. But it wasn't. It's been repealed as far as I know, and don't know if it's gonna come back. I mean, the state didn't properly fund it, and they didn't think it through. It was, a haphazard. It was done, too quickly. There wasn't enough thought into it. I have an opinion of why they did it, and it would be good. And that's the thing, is we need to try to keep people in their home. I agree with that 100%, and it's a difficult situation. But I feel the need.
Right. This is a big subject. I'll try to keep it short. Obviously, if people want to stay in their home, we should do what we can to keep them there. One of the things I see the town could do to help with that is transportation. One of the problems that I've seen people struggle with as they get older is they may not be able to or want to drive as much. And in China, you can't walk to the grocery store. Maybe there's a few people who can, but and I know I at one point looked for Uber drivers or Lyft drivers, and there was nothing in the town. And so maybe the town could try to encourage some sort of public transportation beyond KV cap to provide that for people. I know for medical appointments, virtual appointments are becoming more and more of a thing. And so having infrastructure, broadband, I've been on the broadband committee for a while now, so that people can just go to their medical appointments from their home would allow them to stay in the home. Now, the other aspect of this is maybe a person who's by themselves doesn't need to be in a 5-bedroom, 3-bath house anymore. And so the bill that allowed for the additional dwelling units, I saw as a great thing. You're growing up, or you're raising your family, you build a little ADU for your kid to live in when they are in college and going to college locally. They grow up and maybe you switch, and so you go to the smaller ADU and they go into the bigger house with their kids. That requires you to have enough money to build the ADU and stuff like that. Now, as a selectman, this isn't something we can control, but right now I know I saw news reports that a lot of people feel they're stuck in the house they are in because they have a low interest rate loan, and interest rates are super high right now, so they can't downsize to a lower house because they can't get the good interest rate. And so that the downsizing doesn't just help potentially the elderly person, it helps the younger person who needs the bigger house, because the housing crisis isn't just for the older people, it's also the younger people can't find houses. And like I want to stress, if people want to stay in their big house, they're in their house, I feel they should, and we should help them do that. But also, if they want to be able to switch, we should help them with that as well.
Thank you.
I'm sure the people here are anxious to hear from the individuals that can answer this at the state level, but what I'll say from the lowly budget level is the inflation in this whole nation is out of control. And you say this is a big city issue, it's actually a national issue. And we have plenty of wood here in the state to build houses, I know that. And we're having a hard time selling wood now because the mills aren't buying it, which shows you how backwards everything is right now. But no, I think inflation is one of your major issues right now as far as housing. And that's as far as I'll go on. These people can answer it at the state level.
So I'm a creative problem solver, and the one thing that's very clear about the housing shortage in Maine is one answer is not going to fit for all areas of Maine because different areas have very different needs. Like on the coast, they mostly need housing for seasonal workers. So something that might work there is some dormitory style housing that would be very consolidated and more inexpensive. Areas like Belfast, they have mixed zoning, so they have apartments over top of shops, so they take advantage of the vertical space. And then areas like Waterville, those beautiful old factories, I see they're starting to renovate one of them down there. And, that just makes use of wonderful space that was being neglected, and it's going to revitalize their downtowns. As far as rural areas, what Palermo has done, our planning board just approved 2 new subdivisions, and they're on roads that connect right to Route 3, and the houses are on 1-acre plots. So they're kind of, all clustered around the road. So you're not having to build out 5 miles of road. So this is gonna minimize the costs of paving and plowing and maintenance. I know one other resident in Palermo that's taking advantage of a new program that tries to match homeowners that have extra bedrooms that they'd be willing to rent with people who'd like to rent a room and be a housemate.
Okay, I'll try to run through a few things so we can talk after if you want, but it's obviously a multifaceted issue. This new home sharing program, I just think that we need to have people who are looking at everything and making sure that it's safe for one. I've had an issue with a constituent who was sharing their home, had someone go pretty much crazy on them within the first 2 months, had to go through the actual eviction, different resource for older people who would rent their home to protect them because they can't be in a legal situation, spending money, etc. The other thing is that we need to focus on Mainers first. We did give $33 million out of $50 million this past session to house 2,200 illegal families for 4 months. That is an amount that could have been used in various ways throughout the state to make sure that our homeless people are getting off the streets and that we have that movement. I was at the Mid-Maine Homeless Shelter about a month ago talking with the executive director there and touring their facilities. What we need to do is have the movement in the state of things. We need to have people who are in a homeless shelter be able to move to a low-income apartment, and then from people from there who've gotten stable work, they need to be able to move then to a house. It's just that movement has stopped because we filled the homeless shelters with not necessarily Mainers, and also, say in Brunswick, how we built the new apartments also and have given free rent to people not from Maine. To allow to have that free rent, it stops people from moving out of a homeless shelter to a facility like that. So that was part of the problem as well. Property tax stabilization, it was repealed by the Democrats, and we did try to put in different bills that would make that a better program for our seniors. Of course, none of us wanted, millionaires to get their property taxes frozen just because they were 75 or something. So it definitely needed amendments put onto that. Those were all killed in committee and never made it to the floor. So there's lots of different things to do. We need to emphasize local control. You don't want China to have the same rules as Portland, and that's something at a state level I wouldn't want to do because that we all have our own, no public sewer and, all those things make a difference at the local level. So we have to make sure that locals maintain control as well.
Thank you.
So I'll say to wrap this up briefly because we've heard a lot of different things around the table here. So I'm a huge proponent of affordable senior housing, and having it be placed in communities. I'm working in another community right now where they're taking advantage of the Rural Affordable Housing Senior Program, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a program that allows tax credits for developers who are putting housing in communities for seniors, so it's a transition. They can stay in their community and not have to leave. I think that is one huge barrier for people. They may not want to leave their homes, but they definitely don't want to leave their communities. In Augusta, which I know is different than China, we have wait lists on all of our senior housing developments that we have in the city, and it's something that's really coveted, and they're really nice developments that are accessible for seniors. If you do have seniors who aren't ready to leave their homes, there was at one point a program that allowed people to age in place through Maine Housing that provided grants for kind of accessibility. So if someone needed a ramp to get into their home, there would be grant opportunities for that, or for the bars that would allow you to access your restroom easier. To my knowledge, that hasn't been refunded, so that's certainly something to look at, again, to allow people to kind of stay in their houses a little longer and not have the deferred maintenance that often causes houses to start becoming dilapidated and aren't available for the housing market after that. So.
Okay, thank you. The next question, sort of, we've already touched on. I'll read it, and if anybody wants to add anything, you may, but I think we pretty much already discussed it. It has to do with, well, I'll read it. Statistics show that elderly experience less decline in mental and physical health when they have a purpose and are surrounded by that which is familiar. How can we help China seniors and, in general, seniors in other municipalities age in their own community? But I think we addressed that. Does anybody have anything else to add?
I agree. I think they do well when they're interacting with other folks. And I know my parents did, but they had people that were coming in. They did go out. So, yeah, it made a big difference.
Actually, something that we can do is to provide gathering spaces for people to get together and do things. I know since the time I've been here, there's been several attempts at getting parks or community centers that have always been turned down, and I think that's a real shame. And because a recent example is the dog park. I know my aunt and uncle have met friends at their local dog park because you get there and you have at least one thing in common with the person next to you. You both have dogs, and so you get there and you talk and you meet people and yeah. So something we can do to help the seniors in the community is just have the spaces for them to get together and do things.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add anything? Okay, the next three questions are about emergency services in China and in other municipalities. Fire and ambulance services in China are provided by volunteers at 3 independently operated stations: China Village, South China, and Weeks Mills. These fall under the government of the town of China. How would you propose to increase volunteers at all sites? That is a difficult question. I'm going to start with Tom this time.
That's fine. My opinion on this is I would throw it back to those 3 fire stations and the rescue, not just the 3 fire stations. I think it's up to them to come up with a solution on how we as a town can help them better. We tried this, well, it was tried a few years ago with failure because there was inter-arguing between the stations. As far as I know, my experience with this is the stations don't even all use the same equipment. So if China Village wanted to help South China, they couldn't intermingle some of their equipment. Why aren't they all on the same page? Why aren't they all buying the same type of equipment? so it is interchangeable. So I put it back on the fire stations to actually come up with the town, to the town, and maybe we need an open forum, like something like this, with the fire chiefs and the select board and the town officials to come up with a way to make it work. Because right now, it's hard. As far as their volunteerism go, like anything else, volunteers, I can tell you from, being president of Four Seasons, it's not easy. I've said it many times, I have some of the best volunteers in town on the Four Seasons. And there is a lot of great volunteers on the fire department, but there's not enough. People are not volunteering everywhere. It's not just in this town, it's everywhere in the state. They're not volunteering to do this type of work. How can we do that? How can we get that word out? One, I think social media, they need to get out there and show themselves around town of what they actually do, which is why a few years ago when we did restart the Derby, we asked the fire department to join with us on that and get it out there. Use the fire station, show people, have people come into the fire station. South China does a good job with their barbecue. China Village does a good job with, South China does the auction.
Yeah.
China Village does their barbecue. So I think they're doing good at that, but we need to get more volunteers involved, and stuff like this may help.
Okay, Ed?
Well, I guess my point on this, my take on it is just simply volunteer. It's just volunteer. We don't have, a full-time man station, so, because quite frankly, we couldn't afford it. I mean, there's no way, so, and getting people to go to work is hard to do now. How are you gonna get them to go volunteer? And, you got the fire department, the three fire departments, so you go volunteer, but then you gotta go to this school and that school and this school. You gotta learn all of that. And it's a great thing to do. I mean, it really is, and I applaud every one of these guys that do it. I never did it because, quite frankly, I'd be honest with you, I couldn't dedicate the time to doing it. So why jump into something I wasn't gonna dedicate the time to doing? As far as getting new volunteers, I don't know. I'd like to think that maybe there's some way that maybe the fire departments could go and have a fire department day down at Erskine Academy or something like that, and walk into Erskine Academy and say, hey, fire department's here today. Maybe there's some 18-year-old young men or women that might have an interest in, looking into it, but don't know how to go about it. I don't know. My whole thing is I think it's tough because it's volunteer, and volunteers are hard to get, as you just said, they're hard to get.
Volunteers are hard to get. And I was going to suggest, maybe, starting at the schools and try to promote with these young people the importance of volunteering. And but the fire departments, like Ed said, that with the amount of training that's a dedication. It is a dedication, and it really is tough. It's not like somebody can just, do an hour a week or something, and it's a tough
Well,
thing.
it seems like, when I was young enough, I really thought I could have been a big asset to the fire department. I was raising kids and working 2 jobs.
Yeah.
Now that I'm semi-retired, I got other things I'd like to do. I'd like to help, but again, you don't know me. Sorry.
I don't know, you going to ask the other questions about fire and rescue, or do you want us to elaborate?
Yeah.
No, okay, that's,
Well, I'll start this by saying I'm neither a fireman or involved in the fire department, and so anything that I say here is just my brainstorming and thinking. I would want to coordinate with them and get their opinions before trying to enact anything. I think that was the big to-do with the stipends a few years ago. Seemed to me that it was just a lack of communication between everybody. So we need to make sure that doesn't happen again. Because the fire departments are independent organizations, we as a select board can't really dictate anything, nor should we. But could we help by, like, maybe the town could hire a coordinator to coordinate the 3 fire departments? Or could we better fund them to provide better stipends? I do know the fire departments have been trying to recruit, because my kids the fire department was at an event at the primary school. My kid loved climbing all over the fire truck. But like you guys touched on, people are just so busy these days that you don't have the time to volunteer for many things. I mean, I know when I was trying to run the Cub Scout pack, we couldn't find anybody to help us run the pack. And with the fire department, it's even worse, because there are regulations and trainings that they have to go to in order to be a part of the fire department. So not only is it normal volunteer time commitment, but there's a financial and training commitment. And so is it going to get to the point that the town does need to have its own fire department, like official full-time staff? You said it's cost prohibitive, but would it actually save people money in the long run? Because I know when I filed for my home insurance, they asked, do you have a fire department? And we have the volunteer fire department, and they asked, like, where's the closest fire hydrant and all that. So how much more am I paying in insurance because of the situation in town? Again, there would be a big, huge open discussion that we have to have with the fire departments to see how can the town help. And these are just ideas that I came up with, uninformed ideas.
Okay, Blaine,
So,
next.
yeah, there's a lot of government mandate requirements out there for training and unfunded. So families that want to volunteer and get some of the training, they have to pay for not only some of their training, but I believe they have to pay for some of their equipment. And these are just costs that people can't afford, especially if they're raising a family. And it's very hard. Myself, I'm 65 years old. I can volunteer. I'm busy. I can't. I don't have the time. But if I was retired, I could go volunteer. But I'm not going to have the physical ability that a 40-year-old guy would have, or gal. So I think it's to find volunteers is hard, because from the upper levels of being mandated and having to pay for the cost of some of this training, that should be funded at a level that's above the town. And possibly, I'll give you a little example. We had a fire at our office here in South China back in, I can't remember, 2005 or 6, whenever that was. And I called the insurance company, and they asked me, where is your property? And I said, South China. And he said, oh, it's a volunteer fire department, isn't it? And I said, yes, it is. And he said, let me guess, it's a total loss. And I said, no, not exactly, it's not a total loss. The fire department showed up. We had Vassarboro, we had South China, we had Windsor, we had Weeks Mills. They put the fire out, and I would contribute to the local fire departments, the volunteer fire departments particularly. In events like this, you may have a better result and less costly for you. And they actually ended up, we offered the insurance company, if you'll provide this much money, Blaine and Carey Casey will match it. And they stopped by and dropped off a check for $1,000. And it was unheard of, But I don't think anybody else has done it, and I'm not waiting for the next fire to ask them again. But I found that very interesting, and it was a good conversation with the insurance adjuster at the time. But
Interesting, thank you. Okay. Oh, sorry. State people. And Tim, did you want to add anything?
I would only agree with the other comments that this discussion needs to have the fire department representatives here to be
Yeah.
more meaningful.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this isn't meaningful, but it'd be more meaningful if we had the representatives here. That's my only comment.
Go ahead. Pam.
So, our fire chief in Palermo discussed with the select board alerting us to a much bigger problem with the volunteer fire departments in the whole nation. OSHA is proposing a rule change from the 40-year-old, fire brigade rule to the much more stringent emergency recovery rule or something like that. And the idea behind it is good. It's to help keep our firefighters and EMS people safe. But they've got it on such a stringent timeline and with such elevated requirements that none of our fire trucks in Palermo would be acceptable. We would have to buy turnout gear for a second pair of turnout gear for every firefighter. Much more training. Our fire chief estimated it would cost us $2 million to get it up to code, which is not possible.
No.
So, OSHA's website, they are taking comments if anybody wants to explain how it's going to affect you and your town if your volunteer fire department is inoperable. I did write a letter to the Assistant Secretary of Labor, who's in charge of OSHA, just to let him know what I thought about all that, but I don't know if that will do. But the insurance bit is a big one, because if, say the idea was to regionalize it, so the bigger cities could maybe afford this stuff, but now they're 45 minutes away. Your house is gonna burn down. So, yeah, and you're not gonna be able to get insurance for your house. So I would encourage you all to put your comments on the OSHA website, because it's going to affect every volunteer fire department in the nation.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And it should be noted that in 2019, Janet Mills decided to become an OSHA regulated state. We were not under those federal OSHA guidelines before then. It would have made a huge difference in regards to what we're now facing if OSHA did go ahead with this. I actually foresee kind of a glimmer that they won't make this happen because there's been such an outcry. But I think in regards to volunteers, just brainstorming has incredible power. I sat down with the 3 fire chiefs of China back in May, I think, and we went over all the training and all the books and all the clean out and everything they had to do. So it is an incredible amount of training that volunteers have to do. I love the school ideas to really put a passion in kids. But sometimes we overregulate ourselves out of our lives too. I mean, what regulations? My dad was a volunteer firefighter back in Appleton, and volunteer firefighters are different. We are saving people's lives and we're saving houses. Does everything have to be as stringent as it is? Do we have a secondary amount of volunteer firefighters that can go to an accident? My son was in an accident on Route 3. The firefighters were the first people there. Is that the same as a firefighter? What can we do to alleviate some of this burden on our firefighters? And I think that's at a state level something we have to look at. Maine totally relies, and always has, on our volunteer firefighters. So it's really, I think, something we need to look at further.
And again, I'll wrap up by saying that the OSHA regulations, I actually signed a letter to our congressional delegation that opposed them putting these OSHA regulations on our volunteer firefighter groups in Maine. It would be very cost prohibitive for them. The only other thing I would add is that I was just looking it up on my phone, we are approving a new state fire marshal tomorrow, and so if you are going to be bringing together a group to talk about, volunteer firefighter needs, he's the fire chief in Waterville right now, and he's a local guy, so it might be nice to include him as well, and in that conversation, and just make it a bigger conversation.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Delta Ambulance Service has begun contracting with municipalities and China for their services. The town of China now pays a $25 per capita fee. Faced with their own economic issues, Delta could be increasing fees or even discontinuing their service altogether. If either of these scenarios occurs, what plan should China or other communities be considering? Ed?
Well, there's another loaded question. Well, it seems like every question just comes down to money. You know, it all comes down to money, and it really does. So it'd be great to think that the town of China could have its own ambulance service. I mean, I remember when Windsor Ambulance had Windsor Ambulance forever, and then all of a sudden they didn't. You know, all of a sudden they just didn't have it anymore, and everybody started scrambling. You know, everything's gonna keep going up. You're not gonna be able to stop that. But the answer isn't just throwing more money at it. To me, I don't think the answer. We need to try to be responsible and save a little bit of money, not just throw money at a problem, thinking that just throw some more money at it, it's gonna make it work. I mean, if Delta goes up, I guess we're gonna have to deal with it until we absolutely can't deal with it. Because I don't see us, this town, being able to, you know, have its own ambulance service with manned paramedics and all that stuff and everything that goes with it. Now, I'm not a selectman, I don't see the budget, I don't see all the numbers, but, I mean, our taxes all went up. How much are they gonna go up if we start dumping money at all these problems? Some ways we gotta find a middle ground.
Brent?
All right, so, from what we can see, Delta is charging $25 this year. They said next year, they would have to increase to a sustainable amount. And their sustainable amount is $58 per capita. So, we're paying $110,000 now. $58 is gonna be $255,000. And I see that as, it's more than likely gonna happen. This is a prime example of the federal government and the state government leaving this in the hands of the municipalities. I mean, the state put together a blue ribbon commission to look at what it would take, or what the ambulance services needed statewide. And I'm pretty sure that the figure that they came up with was $300 million. Don't hold me to that, I think that's what it was. So what happened, and this is all information we got from Delta, because they come in and they give us reports, and they said that the legislature didn't fully fund it, nor did they say how it was going to be dispersed amongst services or when it would be dispersed. So once again, they just left the municipalities hanging, you know, holding the bag. And then the other issue with the ambulance service is, so Delta can't bill for a non-transport. So if a person refuses, they don't get any billing. But they can bill for transport. Well, all they can bill is what Medicare will allow. And what Medicare allows isn't enough to cover the cost. So this is a prime example where the federal government and the state government have left municipalities holding the bag on this thing. And as far as what to do, I mean, if Delta goes up to $58 and it's $255,000, well, we can't afford our own ambulance. And I mean, the other issue is, you know, there's times when you might need 4 ambulances. And it's a hit or miss thing with the ambulance service. And I mean, they have the capacity, obviously they've been providing it, and we just can't go without it. That's not even an option. So I would say we better plan on that increase, and some of these things like dog parks, we need to provide essential services to our residents. That is an essential service. A dog park is not.
Todd?
I agree.
Okay.
I do.
So, I can't control what they do at the state or federal level. I can write strongly worded letters, but I can't control it as a selectman. So what can we do as a municipality? It sounds like the Delta situation is somewhat of a monopoly situation in that there's only one option, Delta. Capitalism doesn't work when there's a monopoly. So what are our other options? The only other option is running our own service. Now, do we have to run it on our own? Maybe not. Could we contact Palermo and Albion and Windsor to see, can we form our own ambulance collective so that we can provide competition to Delta? I don't know. I haven't been able, I've not been in a position that I can talk to these people, but it's something we could look into. But I'd also want to hear from the planning and budget committees on such an endeavor, because that's a huge, huge thing. And so it's not something that we can just turn around and do right away. But I really don't like being subject to the whims of one company. And thank goodness we have the Medicare regulations, because if they weren't there, they could charge us anything they wanted because they're monopoly.
Okay.
My turn. Yeah, again, it was a big eye opener when we met with Delta a couple of occasions, and the explanation was how they got paid. I was shocked that they didn't get paid for a number of services that they did, or if they didn't transport people. So that was a lot of time, from Augusta to China. Time they spent there and back was 2 people, 3 hours, with an ambulance cost of $1.5 million. I think was the price that they said cost for it to buy an ambulance. So fully equipped. So I just don't see the town of China, or maybe surrounding communities, can pull something together. When Windsor Ambulance was around, I think they went out because of financial woes. And Delta Ambulance was there at that time and was providing competition. But Windsor had China, Windsor, Somerville, I think, maybe Palermo, I'm not sure at the time. But they served several communities, maybe even Jefferson.
I think they did.
And so there was competition. But if you're providing a service and can't get paid for it, and again, Windsor was a volunteer ambulance, probably didn't have volunteers either. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't think that the town can afford their own. I don't think that the town can afford to go in with other towns. It's a possibility, unless you have more than 5. I mean, you would have to have 6, but again, you have to have that big a community. You got to have more ambulances. You got to have more people, and you're not going to find the volunteers. It's not like it was 30 years ago, when people wanted to volunteer and be a part of the community. That doesn't seem to be there like it used to, because of numerous reasons. Internet, a lot more sports activities that used to be, and these folks are running around with their kids, and that's not all the only problem, but I just find it excruciating expensive. Delta, even up at 58, is a hurt for sure, but I don't know that we could do it for that money either, and then the aggravation of trying to run it.
Tom?
Well, kind of on the same page. I think this is more of a state, federal level discussion than a municipality. I agree with Brent that, they're trying to put it back on the municipalities, and it's just not fair to us. I would love to say that we could probably do something like that, but even if we got in with 2 or 3 other towns, we're buying 1 ambulance. What happens when there's an accident here and an accident over on Route 3 somewhere? That's where Delta has the 3 or 4 ambulances. I'm not sticking up for Delta, because I think what they're doing is wrong. But, as a monopoly, like Todd said, right now, there's nobody against them. I believe that Waterville basically pulled out of it, and they started to transport on their own. You know, is there something we can do? I don't know. And as a selectman's level, I don't think it's our decision. You know, it's somebody needs to come to us and say, this is what needs to happen, you know? And I think it's more on a state and federal level as far as funding goes to the ambulances. They're essential services. We've got to have them.
Liberty ambulance crew. We have a couple other paramedics and EMTs that would also do shifts, paid shifts, I mean, like a real ambulance service with Liberty. And so our fire chief got to talking with their chief and proposed that we combine, work together. And I think another town, I'm not sure how many other towns. So we contract with Liberty Ambulance, and their response times are so much better. It's like 15 minutes. But the even better thing is Liberty Ambulance has equipped all the EMTs and paramedics that live in Palermo with what they call jump bags, which is a bag full of medications and equipment. And so our Palermo EMTs will respond from their homes to the home in Palermo while the ambulance is in transport. So yes, there are things that can be done, but it takes a lot of coordination and negotiation.
Yep. Thanks, and I agree with Reagan. It's definitely something that needs to be looked at from the state level. The Blue Ribbon Commission that Brent mentioned has a lot of good information in it and a lot of framework to alleviate some of these situations with EMS and ambulances. They did approve higher insurance payments to Delta, as well as payments to them to respond, not just to transport, but that was also going to rulemaking. So we can pass things in the State House, then they have to go to rulemaking at that particular department, commission or whatever, and it can be a while before that happens, if they even approve it. So it's a two-tier process. I'm not sure exactly where that is in rulemaking. I actually have been told that Delta would have taken 20 instead of 25 when we did that last negotiation with them. So I'm kind of surprised that they're now saying 58. It has been said that they really need their feet held to the fire in terms of their books and auditing of the payments and things that are going to them for that. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is at the county level, which again, great thoughts Reagan had, is that there is a doctor, a program that they started, I think there's a cost of $300,000 at the county level, that has a doctor who will go out to calls that are life-threatening calls. In the list of calls, and this has only been going on for like a year, there's 4 doctors, I think, that work, but they are also on this call to go out to those calls. China actually had the 3rd or 4th highest. I said, what is happening with China? You know, that we had that many calls. It was like 11 calls in the time period for life-saving measures, and that means a doctor could actually operate on a person and everything, like right as soon as they get there. So that's something, you know, county, they say, I've heard some people moaning about the county budget going up. Didn't go up that much when you really look at your bill. That's one of the programs the county had. So I think some of these, you know, jump bags, doctors responding quickly can alleviate some of the ambulance. But I definitely have a concern about the $58. I know that that's, you know, like you said, a huge jump and something that's concerning.
Interesting ideas, thank you. Tim, did you want to add anything?
Well, I'll get the final brief word this time. Everyone's talking about state and county level. At this exact moment, though, it's at the budget committee level. Do you want the service of Delta the next go around, or do you want me to cut something else? That's up to the voters to communicate that with. I guess I'm the only guy in the budget committee right now. But seriously, this is a budget issue that is short term, because that's where I'm looking right now. It's just a short term between any big decisions that anyone can make. Do you want to cut the services on other subjects in the town, or do you want to have an ambulance service? It's that simple. That's up to what do the voters want to do. And at the moment, I guess I'm going to be the only budget committee member next year, so contact me. So this is the short term.
I'm still on it.
Well, all right. Call Tom Moon. No, but that's a really hard question that all of us have to ask. Where are our values? Do we want to have an ambulance show up short-term to help somebody or have nobody show up. That's where we're at. Work at other services in town.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to economic development. Research in economic development suggests that investing in public open spaces attracts more people and businesses to settle in a community, thereby increasing the tax base. Opposing opinion strives to reduce spending in order to keep taxes low. Which philosophy is more in line with your view? Brent.
Okay. So, one thing I'm curious is to what areas or where the study was conducted. The first question that I would have. And then, I don't disagree if you live in an urban area where, you know, people live one on top of each other on a postage stamp sized piece of property. And when they look around, all they see is concrete and pavement. We're not in that situation. We have a lot of open space. The town, we fund Thurston Park, the China Community Forested Schools. So I think we're doing okay with open space, and I don't think we need to spend any more money on it, so I'm in line with cutting the taxes.
Okay. Todd.
Some of the investments in infrastructure isn't necessarily a just spend money situation. The town could actually spend a little bit of money to save its residents even more. There are lots of grant programs out there where the town would be eligible for the grant, but an individual would not. The town is part of the TIF program, and that money is restricted in what we're allowed to spend it on specifically economic development. If we don't spend that money, as far as I know, it goes away. It's not like we save money. And so not spending that money seems silly to me, because it's not like it's going to save anybody any money. It's just wasting the money. So just because we say the town is going to spend this money doesn't mean it will cost the residents more money in the long run. For things like parks, one thing I've constantly seen people complain about is that people don't talk anymore. That we're divided in our camps and we don't talk to each other. Parks and communal spaces are a way to help fix that. Bring the people together, have events in those public places. And if we don't have the public places, we can't do that. To answer this question specifically, I am in favor of spending, especially if the town can save the residents money by pooling its resources and getting grants to help pay for it.
So, I'm in total disagreement with Todd on this, but I'm not here to argue that. But I just want to clarify one thing you said about the TIF. I am the chairman of the TIF committee, and that money comes from revenue from some CMP properties around town. That is not spend it or lose it money. It will always be there. If it doesn't get spent for a certain thing, the TIF can be amended, which we're going to be voting on in November, another amendment that we worked on to reallocate some of those funds into other places that may be a better fit. But the money does not go away. I just wanted to clarify that. So.
Well, as far as I know, the TIF program is a certain amount of years. I don't know what happens to money that's left in those accounts once the program's over. But the other thing is, we all know that $100 last year is not worth what it is, not worth $100 this year. And so if we just put that money away and don't do anything with it, we're losing money in the long run.
Do you want
I, you kind of are both right, and so I do TIF consulting as part of my work, and you do have a finite time to spend the TIF revenues that you collect in the district. The district can only be up to 30 years. I think they amended the law last year, so you have 2 or 3 years after the district is dissolved in order to spend that money, but if you don't, which the state really doesn't like to hear because it's a huge nightmare to take the money that wasn't spent and basically unshelter it and put it back into your funding formulas. So best practice is to definitely spend it within the time frame. If you don't, then there is a penalization in the idea that your municipal valuation will get changed to account for those TIF revenues you don't spend. So you're both right. Just a little tweak there.
Elaine?
You gotta read that question again.
Oh.
I kinda lost track.
Pay attention, Blake. Research in economic development suggests that investing in public open spaces attracts more people and businesses to settle in a community, thereby increasing the tax base. Opposing opinion strives to reduce spending in order to keep taxes low. Which philosophy is more in line with your view?
Can you give me an example of what the study was? What kind of open spaces? Are we talking parks, community spaces, or are we
Any public open
any
space.
public open
Does
space?
that include libraries?
And libraries.
Sure.
Well, I think as a town, we have funded those spaces, as Brent said earlier. It may not have always been as much as what the other, each organization wanted us to, but I felt that we have been fair to all of the open space that we have. And again, we have a lot of open space. I know where we live, we have a lot of space, so we're not looking to leave our space to go to some public space. And I'm not sure a lot of other people in the town would feel that way as well. I'm sure there's a certain amount that do, and so I think as a town we've tried to provide a balance for that. So.
Thank you. Tom?
This question is kind of near and dear to me. Because I deal with it on a long time basis, being president of the Four Seasons. First, I'd like to say we have a lot of open space. You know, yes, there's been the dog park, there's been another park proposed. The problem I see is you have some really good open spaces. You have Thurston Park, who just put a bunch of money into their trails and system. Now they're running a 3K or something out there. You know, go out there. I don't know, but I can tell you that I helped them for a while in the school forest, and on average, there's not that many people that walk out there. There's a fair amount, but there's not as many that should be, and that's easy walking. The school forest behind the school is really nice and amazing. We have the rink during the winter, and when we do the derby, we have a night for people to come out. We put the lights on. We might get 35 people. Same with volunteers. People just aren't coming out. Say what you want. People aren't using these places for the most of it. Now, the Four Seasons Club maintains 38 miles of trail in this town. That is not just ATV or snowmobile. We have horses, we have fat bike tires, we have hikers, we have people that walk their dogs. We have almost everybody uses our 38 miles of trail that the Four Seasons maintains. We do get a lot of TIF money. We've asked for a lot of TIF money. We've gotten grants from the state. Of course, we get the club grant every year. The TIF, I get what you're saying about the TIF, and I know there's areas that weren't getting used, and that was very near and dear to me because the revolving loan fund was part of that program. In my eyes, it was kind of a failure. We didn't do that well at it. It didn't do that well for us. We got rid of it. We're amending. The voters will be voting on it this year. It's putting money in other places. That TIF has been used. I don't believe there'll be much, if any, money left over in 34, 35, whenever it's
Yeah, it's like 2045.
2040, 2045. I think as a town, we use the TIF very well. I mean, we rebuilt the causeway. In the new TIF, there's more causeway work coming. I believe that, one of your questions, I don't want to ruin it for you, but one of your questions for coming up will be about the sidewalks right through here. There's sidewalk grants through the state that that the TIF will match, and we can do some of this stuff. So as far as open spaces, I guess my thing is I am not for raising taxes to do more open spaces. I think there's ways around that, and I think we have enough open spaces in this town to do stuff. And like I said, again, for the elderly, Sheldon runs a great thing at the town office, and there's other things we can do with that town office property that's already there. As far as the dog park, I'm not a proponent of that. I think it's going to end up costing us money. Yes, they mow it now, but the mowing costs are going to go up because once this person has to go in to a fence line and actually take care of that, who's going to maintain it? Is it Public Works? A lot of that stuff. But I believe we have enough open spaces in this town. We just need to help improve on it.
Said, I don't think there's much more you can say, but except for my opinion is, I don't think we need to spend any more money for things like, parks. Like, and to go along with what Mr. Rump said here is, I own a 40-acre tract of land just on the other side of the lake, and the narrow gauge runs right straight through it, and people walk it every day. And that might be an exaggeration, not every day, but I mean, people walk it, people bring their dogs up there. It is an ATV thing. There's plenty of places. I mean, I've lived in this town my whole life. There's plenty of places we can go, and this is a rural town. We're not living in the city. You're not living in an apartment building, and if you've got a dog, you've got to take him down and try to find a place behind the dumpster for the dog to do his business. We get all kinds of places around here, and 90% of the people that I know, almost everybody that I know, if they got a dog, they probably got a place that they can take their dog out. And as far as businesses go, I don't think an open spaces are going to bring any businesses to town of China. So I would say I'm not for that at all.
Okay.
I'm a small woodlot owner. I've been that way since '83. As a rule, I don't post my land. I see no conflict between business and open space. Talk to your neighbors. If they're I let people on my land hunt, fish, whatever, with permission. Just talk about talking to your neighbors. Talk to your neighbors. Working forest does not get enough recognition in the state or this nation. I see both parks and working forests as the same. Our culture is not there mentally yet. That is also near and dear to my heart. The forest industry is not supported by the general public as a basic role. That's part of the economic problem for the whole state. Forestry is a business, it's recreation, and it's ecology. It's all in the same, and you can walk on your neighbor's private land and just talk to your neighbors like you're asking them to. I'm completely in disagreement with spending more money for that. Let the business buy the land, manage the land. That's the way it should be.
Can I make a couple more comments? You mentioned all these open spaces, yet we do not have any public lake access for anyone that doesn't own a boat. You can go put your boat in, but we don't have a public swimming area. Now, when the town had an opportunity to buy land on the lake to provide a park, that was turned down, and everybody was saying, oh, well, you can just go swim at the church. Well, not everybody's going to be comfortable swimming on the church's property. And yeah, the church is okay with you doing that now, but what happens in 10 years and the church governance changes over and they're not okay with that liability. And then the other thing is, with all these private landowners, it is awesome that they let people use it for all these trails, and I love it. It's private. At any point, any of those owners can remove that access. And especially with the events that have been happening around this country and other countries, with investors coming in and buying up land to resell it as Airbnb or whatever, they're going to come in and say, yeah, we're not going to take the liability of somebody going across our land. So the only way to ensure that access remains open in perpetuity is for it to be public.
Sorry, just to clarify something, you're right, there is no public water access. When there was a big issue of this few years ago, I went to the town for the Four Seasons because we have a wonderful beach, and I offered non-voting right memberships to the town at a reduced amount. And it went out to the people, and 2 people actually sought after those. So you can say what you want, but I don't think the need is there when we only had 2 people. And I mean, our membership is only $35, so it's not that much. And then to your Airbnb, you're right. I don't think it's the Airbnbs that are the problem, because I have 3 Airbnbs that actually I help promote their Airbnbs for having trail access. The problem being the businesses coming in, like the solar farms. Those are the ones shutting land down.
Okay, let's move to the state people. Let's see, who hasn't gone first?
And we're blessed to live in Maine, for sure, and all what you guys have said here is so true. And I mean, China does have a ton of things. To me, it's a local control issue, so I'm not gonna step in and say what China should do with their land when, you know, the town people should vote on that. The only thing I will say as your state representative is that there is a trail bond issue coming up on November 5th to vote on for money for the state to increase trails and upkeep of it for tourism, for people. Tom and I actually talked about this just in the last couple of days. I did go to the people who were pushing that trail bond, and I said to them, well, okay, who are you going to give the money to? And I want a certain amount for central Maine. You know, it doesn't all need to go to Sugarloaf. It doesn't all need to go to Portland. And so I was planning on putting an amendment to that required it to be split. But unfortunately only went to the Senate and got voted on and then signed by the governor. And now it's for yours to vote on. But that was what I was trying to do, and just make sure that our citizens get their fair share of funds to help our trails and to increase, you know, people coming to them or locals being able to access them.
This is all just from a personal point of view. Where I lived before, there were several large farms that, in order to reduce their taxes, they would put it into open space conservation. So it was open to the public without an outlay of cash from the town, just giving up some of those taxes. But it was a great resource for the community, and lots of people used it and walked their dogs off leash illegally. The other thing the town had was public access to the lake, and I really wish that Palermo had that, because that it's nice if all the town's residents can have access to the lake.
And so, in terms of what you cited as a study, I would say that generally that's true, that open spaces do foster a community, and if you're doing planning and development, that would be, you know, when you're laying out your ideal, you know, community, that would be something that you would want to incorporate. You know, the reality is that we all have, you know, real budget expenses to deal with as residents, and the select board is needing to prioritize what they need to for the residents of the community. I have heard of, the program that Pam's talking about, if people want to get creative and start thinking about ways to open up space, but, the select board in the town, I think it's equally important in a place like China to create kind of what if someone were to drive through a very identifiable center of town, for example, and they call it, like a sense of place. It sounds all touchy-feely, but those are the types of things that I think if the select board were going to start focusing on what would make China a place where businesses and people would want to move to, that would be the kind of thing, maybe as opposed to prioritizing open space as the first thing to do, would be kind of like a sense of place for the town center.
Thank you. Everybody got to answer that, right? Okay. Next question. The State of Maine program providing 2 years at a Maine community college tuition-free has been extended through 2025. Are you in favor of specialized educational programs or incentives such as this one that promote technical training in an attempt to keep college graduates and specialized technical workers in Maine after graduating? What else might you propose to address the loss of college graduates to other states and encourage the growth of an educated, skilled labor force in Maine? I think I'm going to start with you three on this one. Sure. Pam, would you like to go first, please?
I think it's great that they extended the 2-year cost of college. Yes, I think technical colleges, vocational colleges are a huge boon for our students, giving them a hard skill that they can earn a living with. I think one of the ways to try and prevent the brain drain of graduates leaving the state is, another way to approach it is to say your tuition will be forgiven if you stay and work for so many years. Because once people get established in a community, they tend to stay.
Thank you.
Katrina. Okay, thank you. So, am I in favor of free community college? Not particularly. We have financial aid, we have grants. My son actually just did free community college, so I can't say I didn't kind of enjoy it. But at the same time, he probably could have come up with $3,000 to $5,000 for his year of welding. And is that taking an opportunity away from someone else, or funds away from Maine that could be used for other things? I think so. I think it could be a different program rather than free for everyone. But I think, and I totally encourage technical skills. My son's in another community college in Ohio for law enforcement. So I love the hard skills, getting out there, working, starting your life. I think that's great for kids. I would say that, where was I going to go with this? Shoot. Oh, yeah. Jobs. My son was like #1 in his class for welding. He's really awesome. And not the easiest to find a job. He doesn't want to be a shipbuilder. He just doesn't want to do that right now. And they weren't clamoring down his door. It's hard for businesses in Maine. And that is the basis of so much. Sometimes when I answer questions, people think maybe I'm trying to get off easy. I say it's all about jobs. It's about jobs for childcare. It's about jobs for housing. It's about jobs for our kids. It's about jobs for our kids to come back and live here in Maine and grow families. And so we need to be a more business-friendly environment in this state, and we are not. The new Family and Medical Leave Act that's going into place is a complete burden on small employers. It's requiring them to pay so much money for people. of course, we have a heart, we want people to be able to take care of their parents and everything, but the burden is too much on employers at this time, and it's driving people out of the state. Look at the restaurants that are closing. I mean, can we even get a good meal in China? I don't know, lately, you know? It's not many, especially when they close down for the winter. And people aren't gonna stay open. In Muddy Rudder in Damascata or Freeport, I think, area is closing. I mean, so many of these are closing. It's not a favorable place in Maine for businesses, and that's at the root of everything.
So I'll agree with some of what Katrina said and completely disagree with other things. So I think that the community college, free community colleges is fantastic, especially now that there's been an announcement that you can go to community college and then move into University of Maine system and continue that education. That's what keeps our kids here, learning and improving skills. We want a skilled workforce, and the truth of the matter is that there are some students who don't have the financial means, as small as they may be, to scrape together to go into higher education. And if we can encourage that and have skilled workers here, that's critically important. Katrina was talking about businesses. I agree 100%. If we want to have people stay here, people move to Maine, they stay in Maine because of jobs. But in addition to that, I, in contrast, think the Family Medical Leave Act is a fantastic thing for recruiting people to come to this state. I think we need more housing to recruit people to come to this state. We need more childcare. We need to make it easier for young families to feel like they have a chance of making it here. And my 17-year-old son has already told me that I have one son who's definitely going to technical school. I have one son who will go to a 4-year college. He's told me that when he gets done with college, he's going to have to move back in with me because he doesn't think he'll be able to find a place to live. I said, that's fine. I mean, it's what you sign up for as a mom, right? But at the same time, for our kids to foresee that for themselves, you know, that's bleak. And so we really need to be addressing all of those things in order to encourage our kids to stay in Maine and to be able to stay in Maine.
Okay. Let's see, Todd, you go first this time.
Okay, I'll try to keep it in time. Disclaimer, I work for the University of Maine system, so I have slight vested interest in funding universities. But I am all in favor for the community colleges. I think that's a great way to start, especially, like you said, with the new announcement of UMaine. You're automatically accepted once you've graduated from college. You don't even have to apply. You're just automatically accepted. I think that it would be awesome if we could extend that even to trade schools. And why should we only pay for community colleges and 4-year universities? If somebody wants to be a welder, we should help encourage that. I can attest to programs that bring people in, even on a temporary basis. We'll get them established. I'm an example. My wife came here for residency, and we stayed. Can stay here.
Thank you.
You know, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that education should be put on the backs of taxpayers, and I'm in favor of the trade schools, and that's the selfish side of me because I am in the construction business, and we really could use a trade like other people could use educated folks as well. When I say educated, I mean a higher level of education. I think every facet of jobs out there right now are hurting and in need of help, like volunteers, right? So I don't think I agree with the taxpayers paying for the education. I'm not in favor of the federal government forgiving all of student loans. I think that in the years past, people found ways to make it work, and you're just going to make it work.
Thank you.
I'm all in favor of trade schools. I'm not in favor of relieving all their debt. I actually, when I went for welding, it was still a VTI back then. There wasn't even community colleges or whatever, they're community colleges now. I did go to a community college to get my business degree. However, I don't think just when they get out, it's free and clear. You know, I learned something by paying back what I owed. I took a, you know, my parents didn't pay for it. I took a student loan out to pay for all that. So I'm not necessarily in favor of that. However, I am in favor of the technical colleges and the trades like that, because if you look like, well, like these guys that have businesses, they're always looking for somebody. You look on social media, Friends of China, or you know, any of these. What are people looking for? Yes, we need our lawyers, doctors, nurses, the 4-year degrees. But if somebody puts out there, what are they looking for? They're looking for a plumber. They're looking for an electrician. They're looking for a carpenter. They're looking for welders. You know, they need people that are in the trades. And some kids are just not. I was one of them. I was not designed to go to a 4-year college. You know, it wasn't going to be for me. I probably would have flunked out. I've made well because I was in the trade, so I totally believe in that. I guess I would go not so much a free, but maybe a reduced rate for those colleges. And I think if they were to do anything, Pam brought up a good point. If you're gonna be in the University of Maine system and you're going to get free or reduced, you got to stay here for a few years. I think that should be a stickler for it, because all these kids now, you know, you get a lot of them going through even the trade schools to be whatever. They're right out of the state. You know, it's hard. But I'm not necessarily a stickler for free. That's for sure.
I'm not for free at all. I just, you know, I'm just not. I mean, there's millions and millions of people that have gone on to college or trade school or anywheres, and they've had to pay their fair share. You know, it's just, if somebody gets set free, then good for you. But, you know, it's a trickle down. And if the government's giving it free, sooner or later it's coming down to all of us. And again, we got to learn to cut some money somewhere. We have to. And just one more thing, we're just giving away. And yeah, I think the trade schools is the way to go. And if we're going to get into that, that's the way to go. I know a lot of people that got 4-year degrees that are working in the trade somewhere because they couldn't get a job in the 4-year degree they went, or they didn't get enough money, or whatever. I got a daughter that's not working because of, and she went to 4 years of school, which government didn't pay for. So I'm not for it. So thank you.
So I'm a proponent for trade schools. I think there was probably a 25-year gap there where, you know, you kept telling high school kids you got to go to a 4-year college, and they just didn't promote trade schools. And now look at where we're at. We don't, you know, we're lacking people in the trades. And I also think that had a lot to do with the price of 4-year universities going through the roof. And you know, it's I get it. It's very difficult to afford it. You know, some of these schools, I don't know, you know, $60,000 a year for some of these colleges. That's insane. And some of them are even more than that, I guess. But I don't think anything should be free. I probably wouldn't be against some sort of an incentive, like Pam said. If you stay here for a certain amount of time, you get some relief. I probably could support something like that if it was well done, which I don't know. Some of the legislation coming out of Augusta is pretty poor. But anyway, that's another subject. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Tim, what about you? What would encourage people to stay in Maine?
Well, for if you want to give them some forgiveness for staying in Maine on their loan, that'd be one thing. But yet, they shouldn't be completely free. And our culture has not promoted the trades enough in the past 15, 20 years anyway. I'll agree with them on that. That's just, these are separate subjects, but the kids have to want to be here, and they have to have a reason to want to be here. And nothing in life is really free anyway for any of us.
Okay, it's 7:50, and I would like to open it up if anybody has questions, and if you all, if anyone here, well, at the end, we'll see if anybody has any more comments. Wayne?
I've got a question, mostly for Todd. You've stood behind community center, a dog park, more parks, lake frontage. How are you gonna fund all this without raising taxes?
Well,
You're-
all of those got turned down, and so if some of them hadn't been turned down, I wouldn't be promoting more of them. So I don't think I would have been behind all of those coming together, but for a lot of the parks, there were grant funds available that could have helped pay for them. The community center, the big reason that I heard was, oh, well, if the town owns that community center, then we won't get the property tax from it. Well, guess what? The church bought it. So we still don't get the property tax from it. Funding can come from multiple sources. I don't think I have lake frontage. I don't need a lakefront park. But not everyone is as privileged as I am. And I think that we should help people who don't have that access. And if you spread the cost of those across the entire town, the amount isn't that large. Especially at the discounted rate that the lakefront property was being offered to us. That's why I've also said that any of these things I'd want major input from the budget committees. We are limited as a town on where we can get revenue from. I believe it's pretty much property taxes and that's it. Which is unfortunate because then you can't adjust. It's really just based on the valuations of the properties, on how much each person is paid. So, like I said, would I have been for all of those if all of them had been approved? Probably not, but none of them have, which is why I keep trying.
Okay.
Any other questions, Joanne?
It's kind of two parts. One part is that I'm aware that there are town budgets across central Maine that have support for general cultural quality in the town. Things like historical societies getting significant support from the town, or we do a great job with outdoor activities and with trying to support Thurston Park and the school forest and trails and the lake issues. But I do think that when you think about a town and our culture in full, that libraries and historical societies are just as important as the outdoor recreational part. And so that's something that I would could ask each of the selectmen candidates, is what they think of the question of supporting cultural things. The other question is related to that in this way. We have, the selectmen are 5 people, and if 3 of them are all in agreement and strongly approving the idea of conserving tax dollars, then what we have the option of voting on on our town ballot is basically what those 3 people think ought to go on the ballot, and we either up it or down it on the ballot. Where this intersects, it's we don't have a town meeting anymore. We don't have an opportunity for people to have alternate proposals on the ballot. And I didn't ever realize this until I was faced with the question of the selectmen deciding they didn't want to fund the $3,000 for the town line. The town line got its $3,000, thankfully, with their cooperation, and I know their good intention, from the TIF program. But that's just an example. It's something that it was an effort to cut town taxes, which is good in principle. But when the discussion went to the budget committee, they felt that there was the possibility, or at least some people in the budget committee felt there was a possibility that the town line ought to be funded, and there was no way to put that on the written ballot for the town to have any input on. The only possible arrangement was for there to be a recommended amount, or not, for the town line, and what we as a community get to vote on is, do we want to do it or do we not want to do it? So my concern there is that we have a town that is so hard that has always been hard to get to our town meeting. That was always a problem when all the years that I was a select person. But it is, and it's still a problem, and COVID only made it worse. But the result of our giving up on trying to do that and having a single written ballot that we up or down on every one of these questions is that 3 people, 3 selectmen who are in agreement, and if they happen to all be very oriented towards budget tightness, which is not a bad thing, it's just but it is a single orientation, that's what we get to vote up or down, and we don't have any input. So I guess,
ask a question. Do you have a question?
well, the question is,
Yeah.
to each of the 5 selectmen, because our new the budget committee ordinance that is on the ballot this right now asks, do we want the budget committee just to be appointed by the selectmen, and they basically will be people who do not have a controlling say in any way, or a place to put down an alternate suggestion if in fact there were an alternate suggestion on any question. I think that the select board, even though it's hard as it needs to ask of our town manager, no matter what it takes, to organize a town meeting. I don't know how each of our select candidates would react to that request.
Okay, is that your question then?
Yes.
Would they support that? Okay. So that's for you 5.
Well, I'll go first, I don't care. You know, I do think that the town could still have a town meeting. I don't have a problem with that at all. The problem is you have a hard job getting enough people to go to it. Now, my understanding on the sending out a ballot is at least you get some response. So, right or wrong, that's, you know, my opinion is if I had my say, we probably would at least try to have another town meeting. But I don't think it's something that will fly as far as getting the response as well as the ballots. That's me.
Anybody else want to address the question?
I really enjoyed the town meetings. I might be crazy, but I did really enjoy them. I loved hearing everybody's point of view. And a lot of issues I didn't even know about until I showed up, and the discussion was great to let me know what was going on. My problem with making the town meeting the official place to vote is that not everyone can do it. Some people have to work on Saturdays. Some people can't physically make it there. Some people can't sit in a folding chair for 6 hours to speak their mind. I would love to see a town meeting where we had the same number of people where we can discuss everything that's going to be on the ballot, because I loved it. But I don't think that should be the only place that the voting happens. As for the appointing, I do think it's a dangerous situation to get that the select board just appoints everybody. Yes, do you trust the selectmen that are going to be here this year? Okay. Do you trust who's going to be there next year or in 10 years from now? That's what you have to think about.
Anybody else want to?
The man's been his hand up for a while.
Yeah.
Well, we gotta finish this one.
I'd like to know the rest of the people's answers to
Yep,
that
okay.
question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so, Joanne, we've had this discussion at the town office previously on several occasions. I guess I would just ask the town people, do you want 75 people making decisions for you? Or do you want 350 people having input on any questions that have arisen with the town? I mean, in my opinion, the more people that you can gauge to tell us, the select board, on our direction and what we feel is right for the town, or what we propose to the town, and what the budget committee puts before us, I think you want to get as many votes as possible, not rather than just a small handful of people from the town that are willing to show up at a town meeting. Unfortunately, the times have changed. I enjoyed the town meetings as well. And I think we had the discussion, the last town meeting I went to was in 2002. And we spent every penny that day, just like we're gonna with this election. It's gonna be yes, 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 yes. And I'm not so sure that on that ballot, which I believe they put on there how many yays and nays there were from the select board, but I think every one of them has, or at least 4, if not 5 votes to put it on the ballot.
My conversation to this, Joan, is one, I think I was the one that found you the money for that. From the budget. So I'm not against stuff like that. My problem is, and I agree, I had a great time at the town meetings. The problem being, after we got quorum, people would start floating out the door. 3 hours into it, there'd be 40 people left in that gymnasium. And then the other thing that I see is, I may not be at every selectmen's meeting or every planning board meeting, but I watch each and every one of them. And more often than not, Mary is the only one in the audience. So if people want their say, they need to show up at these meetings. I mean, it's great to see the people that are here tonight to watch this, but literally, how many people are at a select board meeting or a budget committee